This is a required document closing checklist for residential sales in the state of California as of September 2024. It's about a page and a half long. You can get ideas from it. You can recreate this exact same checklist, copy it if you want, or just get inspiration for your own closing checklist. This is what we use in my brokerage. Of course, we use an online web-based transaction manager where you upload PDFs, but when you see the requirement of which PDF to upload on turbotransaction.com, it mirrors this list right here. So I'll go through it. I'll explain how I've whittled this down to what I feel is the minimal amount of documents. It may seem like a lot, but believe me, it could be a lot longer. But I've whittled it down to keep it as simple as possible while also maintaining compliance, because occasionally files will get audited. You'll get dragged into a legal dispute. But if you have everything here, I'm confident that you'll very likely be safe and not incur some sort of penalty or violation or something. So let me jump right into it. So starting at the top, we have the listing agreement bundle when you're the listing agent. It's only applicable if you're the listing agent. I say bundle because if you look at a listing agreement, and we're looking at one now, it's a 19-page bundle. I mean, you have the MLSA form, seller's advisory. So that's why you see over here all these different acronyms. Buyer's pre-qualification or pre-approval letter, optional. Maybe the buyer is paying cash. That's why we say it's optional. It's good to have if you have it handy, but we don't require it. Purchase agreement is required, and this is the same thing. It's a bundle. So on a purchase agreement, same idea. You have the AD form. This, by the way, this form is required by state law. It's built into the listing agreement, built into the purchase agreement, but also there's all this other stuff. Some of this is required by law, some of it's not, but it's all bundled together in the purchase agreement. That's why we have all these acronyms. Oh gosh, these forms just get longer and longer every year. Counteroffer when applicable, and of course SCO or BCO. Seller counteroffer, buyer counteroffer when applicable. Addendums or amendments when applicable. MLS sheet. We have the seller sign the MLS sheet. Now, and of course this is seller signed only if you're the listing agent. Why do we do this? The seller should sign off and double check to make sure something wasn't wrongly, accidentally advertised or misrepresented by accident. Of course, you could be selling a condo with 2 assigned parking spaces, and you could write in 1 or 2 or something. As an agent, make an honest mistake. Well, you should have the seller double check your work so there's no misunderstanding about what's included, or if the the listing agent puts something on the listing that shouldn't be. So that's why we ask that if you're the listing agent, that you have the seller sign or initial the MLS sheet. Receipt from EMD, and you can just get that from escrow, and that just is like a receipt from when the buyer dropped off their earnest money deposit. And that's just a timestamp. I mean, it's good to have in case a dispute comes up. I'll just leave it at that. FHA, VA mandatory clause, that's only if someone's getting an FHA or VA loan. That's why we say when applicable. But this is a required form if the buyer's getting an FHA or VA loan. Now we have the buyer representation agreement or comparable document. It doesn't have to be the BRBC. It can be a document that's similar, that carries the same. I mean, it needs to be compliant, of course, but it can carry the same role. Now that's, of course, added on since the August 17th change. Same with this, seller payment of buyer's broker, SPBB, if applicable, because there are cases where it might just be written in the contract and there's no SPBB. So we don't require always, only if it applies, if you have it in the file. Now this agency relationship disclosure, that's what I was showing you that's required by state law. It's in the listing agreement and it's in the very top. Let me jump to the purchase agreement just so you can see it. It's this form right here. It's 2 pages, but you only do something on the first page. That's already part of the bundle, but sometimes agents extract just the listing agreement or just the purchase agreement from the bundle, which quite frankly isn't a good idea. But that's why we just remind them, hey, we need that form. It's required by law. Lead disclosure, I need to change this acronym. This is dated. But that lead disclosure form, only on homes built prior to 1978. Natural hazard disclosure report. Now, I see agents get these confused all the time because you have the report, but there's also a signature page. And so let me see if I can jump over to an NHD. So I have an NHD here. Now you have the whole report, right? I mean, you look at the report right here. But there's a page here that has signatures on it. This is the statement page. 2 different things. It's a signature page within the report. And so that's why we have two different lines. There's the report itself, then there's the signature page. Those two items are needed. TDS, required in most cases. Earthquake, only if built prior to 1960. Now here's another line where agents, this is commonly problematic, and that is because the FERPTA is misunderstood. So really every transaction should have this CAR Form AS, Seller's Affidavit of Non-Foreign Status, and you got to make sure you have a social security number here on line 5A. If you don't have it, this form's worthless, by the way. It really is. Why? I've dealt with the IRS with a dispute with this form, and if you don't have that social security number written in by the seller, well, the buyer may be on the hook for the seller's tax bill. Can you believe it? So the thing is people freak out. They send this form all the time without this in here. So we say, okay, no problem. Instead, then just send the qualified substitute, QS, where you have escrow sign off. One of those two forms, AS or QS. That's why in the closing checklist we have AS or QS. Sometimes I see escrow has their own QS. Qualified substitute says escrow is just saying, hey, we're in possession of the FERPTA form AS because they want to keep that social security number private. I mean, it's silly, but I mean, people get so hysterical over it. Like the buyer's going to run with the seller's social. SPQ, seller property questionnaire. We require that. Water conserving plumbing fixtures and carbon dioxide. It's a combo form. WCMD. There's a CMD, and there's another document that's to do with the water heater. We don't require it if you have these other forms. Just this one combo form, WCMD. If you have a comment and you're asking why something's missing or why something's in there, please leave a comment, because I challenge you to challenge this list. I've put a lot of thought into it. It's tried and tested over many years and many disputes. Even our current DRE audit right now. SBSA, statewide buyer and seller. It's just a long disclosure made by CAR. Is it required by law? I mean, there may be some advisory language in there, but I mean, this form's not inherently required, but we require it because it's just for good measure. A lot of this is, these CAR forms are put in place to give a bunch of advisories out so that someone just can't play dumb and say they were never advised on something. Affiliated business disclosure is if your brokerage, it has any affiliated business, it needs to be written out. This is required by law, and it needs to be signed by the parties, acknowledging that they know that you're related to such and such escrow company or such and such a mortgage company. They need to know that the owners of your brokerage have some sort of revenue agreement with another company. It's very important that you have this in here to be RESPA compliant. This fire hardening is only required if the NHD shows a high fire hazard risk. HOA documents, only if there's an HOA. We get down here to, we only require contingency removal when it's applicable, because sometimes the buyer never sends it. I mean, we have transactions closed and the buyer never sends their contingency removal. Whatever. I mean, if you have it, submit it. If not, and the transaction closed, okay then. Property inspection. If the buyer waives the inspection, use the buyer inspection waiver. Very important. One or the other, inspection report or waiver. Request for repairs and seller's response, the RR and the quadruple R, if they're used. I mean, if not, of course, there was no request for repairs. And then if termite inspection, again, if there's no termite inspection, use a buyer inspection waiver, BIW form. And termite completion only if work was done. We ask from escrow a copy of their escrow instructions. It does not need to be signed. We just need to know what they're like. We ask for a copy of the title report, of course, very important. And then a copy of the home warranty plan. There's usually a confirmation page once a home warranty plan is ordered, only if a home warranty plan was part of the transaction. And then finally, closing statement, of course, the verification of property condition, the VP form, final walkthrough, copy of commission check. And you should know if there are special disclosures for your area. You should really know that. Anywhere you do business, you should, as an agent, you should know that. And if so, upload them. And if there's anything else which comes up in the course of doing business, just upload it. And that's it. I mean, if everything is done properly, you're going to be compliant and in business for a very long time. It's when people start leaving stuff out and cutting corners, it catches up with them eventually. It's very bad. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you.